Okay, sorry about that. Check this out. Consumer inflation numbers just came out at 8.5%. That is a 40-year high. If you're not tired from me saying this, I want to show you this little quick article here from Seeking Alpha. Look, numbers are insane. Increases in prices for gasoline, housing, and food all contributed to the seasonally adjusted figure, with gasoline up 18.3%. Now look, whoo, year over year, CPI rose 8.5% versus the consensus. Now, previous month, which was February, it was 7.9%. You got to take that in context. That is a record high. I agree with Stuart Hoffman, whoever the fuck he is. This is not good. Now, look, he's saying here that 50 basis points is a given now. Motherfucker, 50 basis points is just a drop in the ocean. Shit are bad and they're about to get worse. 50 basis points in May is not even a question. The question is, how far would this thing go until the end of the year? I'm not sure they're going to be down with seven hikes. That might need to go way, way higher. Now look, everybody's going to basically circle jerk over the core CPI numbers being 0.3 versus 0.5. I mean, look, the core CPI is the way of the government to tell you that everything is fine. Don't worry, everything is fine. Look, we're not going to measure the things that you actually need and use. We're just going to measure a bunch of shit that's going to make the number look much, much smaller. So, getting hyped up over CPI core 0.3, I'm not buying that. Now, look, of course, they're talking about 50 basis points, 90% probability. I mean, golly. I mean, that's not a huge shock. I mean, we all know that's going to happen. Now, look, let me scroll back up here. This is not a lot of surprises here. Look, I'm going to give you my 2 cents about it, and then I'm going to talk about what happened with Charlie Munger, because Charlie Munger actually dumped 50% of his Alibaba stock. That's another interesting story. Now, first of all, let's talk about inflation. So, inflation is hotter than Pamela Anderson in Baywatch. It's the hottest it's been since 1981. Things are bad and they're going to get worse. I mean, it's almost like at this point with this administration, I mean, they're so confused. Like, pop the champagne, Joe. We did it. We did it, Joe. I mean, he probably thinks at this point of his life that, the highest in 40 years is actually a good thing. I would not be surprised. I mean, the bonehead decisions that this administration was taking so far. Woo! The sad truth of this, and jokes aside, is inflation is a tax on the poor. And the worst of it is going to be on the poor and the middle class. The middle class and the poor are going to get screwed the most, as always. And no matter how, the stock market takes it, and so far it seems like the stock market is loving it, it don't matter because the poor people and the middle class people, like the rest of us, are going to get screwed up the wazoo when we buy essentials like bread, like wheat, like freaking underwear, gas. I mean, things that we all fucking need every fucking day. Those are way more expensive than 8.5%, and they're about to get more percent expensive. Now, if you're looking for a little bit of a positive spin on this, the only good thing I can find here is that gasoline with 18% in March contributed about half of the increase. And in March, if you look at crude was elevated in March, 113, 114, 120. So there was a massive spike in March in crude oil. And it seems to have come down, I think mainly because of the Chinese lockdowns, to sub 100. So March was really, really up there with the crude oil. So if you want like a positive spin, without the spike in March, we don't see 18% probably, but let's see what happens next. That's the only good thing I have to say about it. That there's a little bit of a skewed element because of crude oil prices in March. Now, things I can't spin is the fact that we're already 13 months into inflation above the Fed benchmark of 2%. Now, we cannot blame Putin like this administration already tried doing. It's not his fault. It wasn't his fault. It's not about the Russian invasion. It's a simple mathematical formula. When you print 40% of the US dollar during a single year, you're going to cause inflation. It's just simple math. You can talk about supply chains, you can talk about macroeconomics and geopolitics, but when you print so much goddamn money, you're going to cause inflation. You can't have the cake and eat it too, or you can't eat it and have it, whatever. Now, macroeconomically, we're in deep doo doo. It's going to be ugly. We have the Russian invasion in Ukraine. We have surging energy prices. China is in massive lockdown. We have supply chain fuckery, wage growth out of control. We got Walmart offering 100 plus grand for truck drivers to come into work. And not that I'm against it. I think truck drivers should definitely get paid. But I mean, it's across the board. Wage increases are crazy. And on the other hand, people can't hire some, basic jobs that we always needed to get filled up. They can't get people to come in through the door. The food industry, for example, but there's many others. I mean, again, it's not Putin's fault, and it's definitely not transitory, Mr. Powell. I think we all know that by now. And again, I think the only thing the government is going to do in this case, instead of solving the underlying problem, which is uh, allow the Fed to increase rates without sending the U.S. debt skyrocketing. And there's ways to do it. I made videos about it, how you can restructure the debt to not be as sensitive for rate increases. But what they'll do is the easy solution, I think, like any government. And it's not about, left or right or whatever. All politicians, they'll do the same. They'll find a new formula to calculate inflation to show you that things are not as bad as they seem. But, just ask yourself this question. How much are you paying more in the supermarket right now and in the gas station? Is it 8.5%? Well, you know the answer to that. Now, I want to show you this. Charlie Munger sold to the man from Omaha and his friend. I'm kidding. It's actually Charlie's own stake. Yeah, he sold half of his Alibaba stake. The one he bought at the end of last year at over $160. He bought it at the end of last year. He sold it for $100 this year. And the question is like, what's going on here? And I'm gonna be fair. I don't want to be an asshole. There might be a good explanation here because, there's this well famous saying that there are many many reasons to sell a stock, but only one reason to buy a stock, or maybe you tell it vice versa. But the thing is, stock selling can be done from a lot of different reasons. It can be tax harvesting. It can be, trying to convert these American shares into Hong Kong shares, getting out of the VIE into actual shares of Alibaba. It can be a lot of different opportunities here for Munger to do his thing. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but we haven't heard any explanation from him. So we're going to assume that those 300,000 shares he bought at the end of last year and now he sold was basically him admitting that it's not as good of an investment as he thought originally. Now, look, there is one thing you should be aware of. So these shares were held by the Daily Journal. I don't know why my Russian accent all of a sudden. This is held by the Daily Journal. And Munger actually stepped down. He's no longer the chairman of the board in March. So he steps down. A month later, they sell half this shit. Does it mean that he was forced to step down because of his Baba bet? Baba bet? Or maybe they just waited for him to step down to liquidate, or maybe, I don't know. It just, for me, I always found it really, really funny how people threw his name around to justify owning Alibaba stock or any Chinese stock in this geopolitical environment. I think people after Russia realized that geopolitical risks are real and should be taken into account and priced in, especially if you're buying a contractual right and not an actual ownership of a company. For me, and I've said it before, and I said it on our show this morning on Money Talks, I said it. Investing in a company in a country that's being controlled by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is basically glorifying the communist regime and the communist dictatorship. And I don't do that. And if you do that, you're supporting communist dictatorships. Just my 2 cents about it. But here's the big question here. Until we hear from Munger, we don't know why he did this, but if in fact this is an admission of defeat with Baba, I would say that this is just the beginning. I would say that there's a lot of different investors out there who followed this dude through the door into Alibaba, and we'll see what happens with it. But hey, you know, people who live in Palantir houses should be throwing babas at the walls. You know what I mean? So, I'll take my licks. I'm also, deep shit in Baba and the Palantir myself. So, I guess comment below which is the trashiest performing stock of the past year. Is it Alibaba or Palantir? Let's see what we have below. And by the way, no hate for my Chinese subscribers. I love you all, and I love your culture, and I love you as people. I don't fuck with the Chinese government, with communist dictatorship. That's it. So if you want to hate me for it, so be it. See you tomorrow. And don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon. If you are, you're going to watch some old Russian movies with us, and, there's no stock tips. I mean, there's no paywall. You're just going to be hanging out. We actually have a Zoom call today. So if you join today, you can hop on our Zoom call at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. See you there.